My name is Beth Skog, and I created this video for a few purposes. One, I wanted to give hope to others, and the other is to give an overview account of my final trial for divorce and custody of my children. I'm going to speak as quickly as I can to make this video shorter than what it would be. If you don't get all of it the first time, feel free to watch it again. If you've been following my story, then you'll know that I unexpectedly lost temporary custody of my children in July of 2020. The reason that the Deschutes County Court in Bend, Oregon Judge Alicia Sikora used to remove my children from me was that I prayed and I talked with God. The most shocking part was that she found that my children were safe in their father's custody. The Child Advocacy Center professionals who interviewed my children never testified to my children's disclosures. There were many things that went wrong that morning in the court, but I'm not going to focus on the past at this moment. I created this video on Sunday, September 27th of 2022. I have not seen my children since this day, and the Deschutes County Court, along with my soon-to-be, ex-husband now, has done everything within their power to keep them from me. My daughter was only 8 years old and my son had just turned 12 years old. I will keep their names out of this for confidentiality reasons, but I do believe that when they're 18 years old, they will share their story and their testimony. They are the bravest and most courageous kids that I know and maybe ever will know. My journey has not been an easy one, but I can honestly say that it's been because of my faith in a living God. Some people may find it strange that I find Jesus to be my best friend, but he really is. I have friends, but this friend is with me all the time, and the best part is that he's always honest, and he loves me unconditionally all of the time. He is the number one reason why I never and will never give up for justice for my children, but for others too. Some people may not know this, but I prayed about everything before this journey started. Again, you may find that strange, but I was in a place of desperate need. My marriage was falling apart, and my oldest son, who is now 22 years old, was arrested for a long list of child pornography. I was shaken to my roots. And the only thing that I knew from past shakings, even as a child, was to pray and read the Bible. So that's exactly what I did. 5 months after I filed for divorce, my children disclosed to me some very dark and disturbing things that had been happening to them for as long as they could remember. My mother bear instinct instantly kicked in. I don't have time to share the timeline of events that happened after that moment, but I'll admit that my world was spinning and even more shaken than before. That is when the Lord showed up in my life and started working overtime to show me that he will not leave me. He also promised me that I would get sole custody, encouraged me to trust him. At some point, I will share much more details about this and the things, but for now, I want to stick to just sharing about the final legal outcome. But I want to make it clear that at this point in my fight for sole custody was not for selfish reasons or backlash towards my soon-to-be ex-husband. It was for the safety of my children. Leading up to the final trial and over the past year and a half in Deschutes County, Oregon, I had requested numerous hearings to get visitation with my children and provide legal documents collaborating with my children's statements. But all of these requests were denied. I was not allowed due process. I had valid concerns for my children, but this court did everything that they could to continue the tyranny. Sure, that's a strong word to use, but when you keep children from a mother who had been the primary parent and caregiver to them, then that's being oppressive to the children and the mother. And that's exactly what they were doing. As I began voicing my story on social media, I had 9 other women contact me with similar stories. These stories range from a mother not seeing her kids in 6 years until her son was old enough to drive to her house to see her at his own will, to another story as a terrible report that this terrible story shocks me to my core, she reported a concern of sexual abuse to her baby, and the Deschutes County DHS took her baby from her and gave it back to the alleged perpetrator, who was the baby's father, and placed an immediate danger order on the mother. It has been a year since she's seen her baby, and she was still nursing this baby. She is still fighting it in the court to this day. If you're a decent human being, then your blood would be boiling just hearing this. Well, mine was. Shortly after that, I had numerous contempt of court threats being filed against me, saying that I was sharing protected information with the media. Well, they lost that day in court. Okay, so let's move on to my journey and the final days of trial. I'm going to give you a synopsis, but someday I plan on giving a day-by-day account soon. I'm looking forward to listening to it because it's all honestly kind of comical. Plus, I've decided to go into law. My intention is to make some noise in our judicial system, take down what's not working, and rebuild righteous and truthful justice. Sure, I'll have a Juris Doctorate, but I'm going to take it beyond that. And who knows what the Lord has planned for me. But I do know that He is not happy with what's going on now. He's cleaning house, and I'm happy to be His servant. Some of you already know the outcome of my trial, and you're probably wondering, how can I be so upbeat and positive? Well, I'll get into more of that towards the end. Do you remember what the Lord told me in the very beginning of this journey? I would have sole custody. This was even before my children disclosed to professionals. I have even more confidence that this will happen than I did before this all started, and that excites me. Why? Because this means that His plans are much greater than mine. Here's the thing. My plan, let me emphasize, my plan, not the Lord's plan, but my plan was to get sole custody at the final trial for divorce and custody. Sounds simple and great, right? I thought so. But my plan was exactly that. I planned when this journey would end, which was at trial. Many do not know how convoluted this case got, or the people behind the people. Yes, I said that. The people behind the people. Here's an example. When you buy something from a checker at the store, who are you buying it from? Not the checker. She has a boss, and that person has a boss, and so on, right? I hope this makes sense now. Nothing about my case is a coincidence, meaning what the case was about, the timing, the people, the technology, the resources, and agencies involved. None of this was a coincidence, not one, including myself and my children. My case is like other cases coming out of Deschutes County, Oregon. There's a minimum that I know of 9 other cases very similar. This number doesn't take into consideration the possibility of past years or others who have reported. That is not a coincidence, is it? That's when you look for a common denominator. So what is that? I think you know the answer to that question. So, back to my plan, and that justice would happen in court because the Lord told me that I would have sole custody. It had now been almost 2 years since I had held them in my arms, felt the breath of their voice, and been able to tell them that I loved them. I thought that the Lord would for sure make the judge rule according to His righteous justice. After all, these are innocent children who have been through things that no child should have to go through. It just made sense in my little mind that it would happen. But then God happened. Have you ever seen a beautifully designed cobblestone patio? It doesn't happen overnight. The builder orders the stone based on the final project. The craftsman then begins laying the stone down, one stone at a time, to bring about the perfect design. The craftsman knows how many stones it will take, he knows what it will look like when it's finished, and he knows when the last stone needs to be placed and where. He has it all perfectly created. When he's all done, he takes a step back, maybe takes a picture or two, and marvels at his craftsmanship. The very last step is the most important thing, and that's when he seals it to protect it from the storms to come. How does this relate to me? I'm glad you asked. Remember when I lost temporary custody back in July of 2020 because I was a threat to my children for praying and talking with God? Well, just before that happened, I had began laying down the foundation to my new life after divorce. But when I lost custody of my children, that was a major storm that nearly washed out my foundation. If you ever built something, you know that a sturdy foundation is extremely important, right? Well, my foundation was almost washed out by that storm. Fortunately, my previous foundation was anchored in the Lord, so He was there to hold me up. I can't say enough about being earnest in prayer and reading the Bible every day, not just when you feel like it or when you're in desperate need, but all the time. Create a lifestyle of being with Jesus, and it's going to change your life. It's not only changed my life, but sustained me through it, and so that I can continue. So back to the storm. Despite it almost washing out my foundation, I continued because I knew what was going to happen. Just like the builder knows how the patio will look when he is done laying down the cobblestones, I knew what the Lord had told me. I would have sole custody of my children. I had faith to believe in what I could not see. Isn't that faith? Believing in what we cannot see? So I kept laying down the cobblestones, meaning that I continued working with my attorneys. I kept getting hit storm after storm, one after another, relating to legal procedure matters and the court. I'm not sure that I ever got a break from the storms. It was tiresome, but I kept going. In essence, I kept laying down the cobblestones one after another despite the storms. My anchor was the Lord. I was consistent, and I still am, with spending time with the Lord, reading the Bible and prayer. I kept my eyes focused on things above, like others who had gone before me in Hebrews chapter 11. I also continued to take every thought captive to the obedience of Jesus Christ, especially the destructive ones. The devil has no match for a child of God. There was a point in time that I was so focused on what I was doing legally that I just figured that the Lord's plan and timing was to bring my kids home after the final trial was finished. So in other words, I stepped back to look at the patio with the beautiful cobblestones and thought, that looks really good. And the last cobblestone will be placed on January 25th, 2022 at the end of the trial. The builder never told me that was going to be the day. My plan just seemed too perfect for that not to happen. Have you ever done that before? Or am I the only one? I'll admit that the storms were brutal, and there were many times that I almost gave up. But I was reminded of Isaiah 40, verse 31. Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and they will not be faint. Little did I know there was a side yard that still needed to be completed with those cobblestones. 3 days before trial, another storm hit. Brian's attorney, and with the help of the Deschutes County Court in Oregon, was able to get my lead attorney, Vincent W. Davis from California, removed from my case by not extending his license to practice law in Deschutes County. This was despite the Oregon State Bar giving him permission. By the way, this attorney is nationally recognized who cleans house in the courtroom. This man was trained by the best of the best, and Brian's attorney, Todd Wilson, and the kid's attorney, Sarah Harlos, they knew this. So did the Deschutes County Courthouse. They knew that there would be a showdown at trial, and they had no chance of prevailing. 3 days before trial, I was left alone with the local attorney representing me, who had been working with this experienced attorney. However, my local attorney, Michael Hodson, had little to no experience litigating family and divorce custody issues, but I pressed forward in the storm. I kept laying down the cobblestones, keeping my eyes on the last stone to be placed when the trial would be finished. What else do I do? The trial began. I plan on sharing day-by-day account, but here's a brief overview of the trial. It was scheduled for 6 days. I would have the first 3 days to present my case with the evidence, and the second 3 days would be for my soon-to-be ex-husband to present his case. The day before trial, we filed a motion to exclude the custody evaluator's report. Her name is Dr. Wendy Borg, B-O-U-R-G, and her testimony. I had hired this evaluator 15 months prior, and she still was not done with it. That is unusual. My attorney got an email a few days before trial starting, and she said that she would have it done by Wednesday, which would be the day after we started my part of the trial. Hence why we filed the motion to exclude her report and testimony. It wouldn't give us enough time to analyze it and have an expert review it. You'd think that a custody evaluator would be honest, but I quickly found out that is not true. I had someone contact me to tell me that they had experience with Dr. Wendy Borg before, and she was far from honest. Unfortunately, she does not have the best interest of children involved. It makes me so sick that this kind of stuff happens, and then we wonder why our nation is so messed up with addiction, suicides, murders, and the list goes on. Our children are our future, and if they're not properly being loved, then we can't expect love from them. God help our country. Oh, and by the way, the trial was on an internet platform. The first day was short because they had clerical issues. The judge saw our motion to exclude the custody evaluator and said that he will wait to make the decision until after the report is received. The second day, the judge started by telling us that he had added a day to trial on Monday since the day before was cut short. We began the trial with the Child Advocacy Center testifying about my children's disclosures. This woman was not just some lady. She has her law degree and extremely experienced with children's disclosures. So I would call her an expert, although we didn't bring her on as an expert. She read the pages of disclosures that my children made. Furthermore, she continued her belief that she was highly concerned for my children even after they had recanted. We also had a nationally renowned expert testifying regarding children recantations, why it happens, and how to handle it. She described the risk factors which my children had checked off every single risk factor. She described that it was not a surprise that my children had recanted their original statements. The third day was eventful. We had a nationally renowned expert with a doctorate degree in child psychology and abuse. She is also an expert in dissociative identity disorders caused by childhood trauma. She was excellent, but I feel that the judge harassed Michael, my attorney, while he was trying to do his direct examination of her. Eventually, the judge took over the questioning of my witness. It was during this time that I realized that Michael was not capable of representing me in this case. He had the knowledge but not the confidence, nor the experience of litigating in a trial. It was after this that the judge literally made it very clear, and he could see that Michael was struggling, and advised my attorney, Michael, to give me an option to fire him and get a new attorney or continue the trial representing myself. The judge said that he would reschedule the trial for a later date. However, Brian's attorney said that he did not have time in his schedule until mid-July to do a trial. After the day was finished, I met with another attorney who I had hired as a consultant for me, and he told me to fire Michael and find a new attorney. My stomach sunk because I didn't want to wait until July. Another 7 months? My children can't wait another 7 months. Additionally, I knew that if I lost this trial, I would have to file an appeal, and that could take 1.5 to 2 years to be heard by an appellate courthouse. I went back to my hotel and I prayed about it. I also asked others to pray about it because I needed confirmation. This was a big decision. After all, my children had not seen me in almost 2 years, and I felt like they were on the line. So I wanted to do the right thing, which was whatever the Lord said to do. I have this saying that I've been saying for a long time. It's proven to be true. Where God guides, God provides. I prayed about it, and I felt that the Lord said to fire Michael and continue the trial representing myself. I was a bit nervous, but I knew this case more than anyone. I contacted the other two people who I had asked for confirmation from, and they also said the same thing. The next morning on day 4, which was Friday, I fired Michael and told the judge that I would be representing myself. I think that everyone was shocked. I really think that they wanted this trial to get rescheduled. That would have prolonged everything. I was ready, and so were my expert witnesses. I started my day by doing a direct examination of my police expert witness. He is retired from law enforcement as a detective with decades of experience and years of experience specifically regarding child abuse. This direct examination went well. When it came to Brian's attorney, Mr. Wilson, cross-examining him, he tried to use a bias card. This expert witness had posted encouraging comments on my Facebook page, and Mr. Wilson used that reason that my expert would only see things one way, in a biased way. On redirect, I established that I had only become friends with him after I hired him on the case, and that we had never interacted socially outside of my case. However, later on, the final judgment day, this judge said that he found my experts to be biased. Based on my testimony and evidence, this judge was more biased for Brian than my experts were for the truth. Later in that afternoon, Mr. Wilson, Brian's attorney, had a few witnesses testifying for him. This is when I began to see my case with an even bigger revelation to what God was doing. Brian's witness was my sister, Joy Terribly. I sat there thinking, wow, we are really living in the end times. The Bible says that child will turn against parent and sibling against sibling. It was an unreal experience to hear my sister speak such ugliness and do her best to destroy my character. But here's the thing, something that I've never seen before. There was something that I had never seen before. It reminded me of a scripture that says, one day every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. When I cross-examined her, and on my very first question, I literally watched her stature immediately change. It dropped. The tone of her voice changed. It was as if whatever spirit was living inside her literally dropped into submission to the living God inside me. She answered every question truthfully, which exposed the lies and humbled her. Brian's next witness was my oldest son, who was testifying to the goodness of who Brian was as a stepfather. Everything that he had to say about Brian shocked me because it was nowhere near the truth. They had a terrible relationship. Brian was always gaslighting him, and my son would react in anger, which I could understand. It was again when I questioned my son that I could see his posture and voice change. I'll be honest, questioning my own son, especially the specific questions relating to his past convictions, relating to child sex crimes, was really hard because I didn't want to attack him or make him feel condemned. I wanted it to come across more of as an attorney-like person asking him these questions rather than his mother. I wanted to establish his credibility, or really lack of his credibility, of his testimony supporting Brian. I do feel like I established what I was looking for. I do have to say I found it very odd that Mr. Wilson chose to use him as a witness. It seemed like a very unexperienced attorney move. But who am I to judge? I'm not an attorney. Yet. I'll explain more on that later. The last witness for Brian on Friday was my kid's counselor. Same experience with her. I watched her countenance and stature change when it came to me cross-examining her. It seriously looked as if her spirit was bowing in submission to Jesus Christ. Not literally bowing, but in her spirit. if that makes sense. The most unsettling thing of her testimony was that my middle son, the one who was taken away from me, was not doing well. The look on her face was enough to write an entire page about, maybe two. She was really worried for him. I will get into more of that later, but I am still concerned for my son. I had a very, very close relationship with him. He even testified during a video that he made before he had to go back to his father that I was his anchor and he wasn't sure what he was going to do without me, but he also acknowledged that he had God. I will hold on to that as hope for him. He's 13 years old and my father took his life, so he is at a higher risk of suicide than most teens. I will continue to pray protection over him. That day ended, and all weekend I trained with a nationally recognized attorney regarding cross-examination. Hands down, it was the best training I've ever had. It actually made me interested and excited for law. Oh, and let me remind you about the custody evaluator's report. She was supposed to give us the report on Wednesday, the week prior, but it never showed up. For some random reason, I looked at my email late in the day on Sunday and noticed an email from the custody evaluator. It was her report, and almost 230 pages long. That was only part 1. She sent me part 2 at 12:23 a.m. because I was studying. Monday came around and the custody evaluator's report came up. The judge denied my request to exclude her report and schooled me that I should have plenty of time to review her report in the evenings. I was shocked and a little angry, but I knew that he just gave me excellent reason to appeal this case if I lost custody, so I chose to see the silver lining. I'll get into more details of what happened the rest of the day on another post. I'm going to speed up the rest of what happened to the rest of the week and cut to the chase. I had an absolutely awesome time being an attorney and cross-examining Brian's witnesses. Honestly, I say this with humility. My technique couldn't even come close to being compared to the other attorneys. But I do give God all the glory because there's no way that I could have done what I did without him. In fact, I was asked on numerous occasions if there was an attorney in the room with me. I'll take that as a compliment. It was all God helping me to remember and apply the training that I had gotten from the weekend. Trial went all week. The 6-day trial ended up being 9 days. Since that time, I've asked numerous attorneys if they've ever seen someone self-representing themselves for a 9-day trial, and everyone has said no. That's proof that was God. The last day was me doing a direct examination of my witness, who was established as an expert witness regarding SANE evaluations that my children had undergone at St. Charles Medical Center in Bend, Oregon. By the way, SANE means Sexual Assault Nurse Evaluation. She was determined to be an expert for reviewing these documents and images. This nurse had 40 years of experience. She determined that my children's statements that they made to a nurse that day back in 2020 were concurrent with the images that she reviewed. Let's just say for confidentiality reasons of what this nurse said about my daughter was telling the truth. I won't get into the specifics of what happened, but the judge was extremely disrespectful to this nurse. There's been a few attorneys who have heard this portion of the audio recording of the trial, and they were all shocked by how this judge treated her. In fact, they had never heard of a judge being so disrespectful to any expert witness as he was. If truth be told, he was that way with me and all of my witnesses. I just thought that's how judges act, but these experienced attorneys said not at all. At the end of the day, the judge said that he would give us a final decision on Monday. I patiently waited and prayed all weekend. The Lord kept reminding me to be patient and that his promise to me had not changed. Monday came around and the Lord kept saying over and over again to me, "Trust me, I am God." I am so glad that he kept telling me this. And as the judge started talking, I heard the Lord say, "Be patient, Beth." I couldn't understand what that meant until I heard the judge say that he determined that Brian should have sole custody. Judge Randy Miller said that he made that decision because he believed my 13-year-old son's recantation testimony at court. This judge disregarded taking into consideration that my son may have been scared to tell the truth. Additionally, he disregarded taking into consideration that a nationally renowned expert stated that a child would almost 100% of the time recant when placed in the situation that my children were placed in. He also disregarded taking into consideration the nurse expert review of the hospital images that collaborated with my children's statements. He also disregarded taking into consideration the Kids Center professionals who the court still consistently to this day refers children to. He also disregarded taking into consideration a nationally renowned expert who reviewed every document and report. When it comes down to it, Judge Randy Miller believed a 13-year-old boy over numerous trained and experienced professionals with doctorate degrees. Oh, and if that wasn't enough, he also determined that I should pay child support based on how much I made back in 2009. This judge knew that I currently did not have a job, but he still concluded that I could miraculously make $80,000 a year. So what now? I'm supposed to get supervised visits with my kids, but this attorney in the Deschutes County Court has been successful from withholding children from their mothers, so I'm not going to hold my breath. I am reminded of that cobblestone patio that the builder was building. I tried to step in and lay the last stone down at the conclusion of trial. But that wasn't the Lord's plan. The builder is Jesus. He sees a bigger picture. He knew the end from the beginning. He was not surprised by Judge Randy Miller's decision. I'm sure that he was disappointed and wanted this judge to rule according to his will and by the presented truth. But he wasn't planning on relying on an unrighteous man who has free will to apply his own judgment. He knew what would happen and is not surprised, which means that he has another plan. God knows how it will end. I'm reminded of a word he gave me a long time ago at the beginning. He said, "It will be glorious. It will be glorious." No matter how long and where this journey takes me, I believe that it will happen, and my children will be redeemed through it. They will be returned to me. They will be vindicated for every brave and courageous word that they told professionals. I have no doubt about it, none. I will file an appeal with the appellate court and continue fighting for justice. I'll take this all the way to the United States Court of Appeals if I have to. After all, mine and my children's constitutional rights were removed. This fight in me, it's not me, it's the Lord. So I know what He's planning on doing. He's cleaning house. I will continue to fight for justice and exposure of what this court has been doing to numerous other mothers, but worse, it's to the children, and it's been happening for a very long time. What now? Most would be angry after hearing what this judge did, and I'll admit I was. I then realized that I am not this man's judge. The Lord is, and I don't want to be there on Judgment Day. I don't think that we realize that when we hurt a child of God, we're hurting God, not that person. Sure, if we're the victim, we feel the pain, but ultimately Scripture says that they'll have to deal with God, not us. But if I don't forgive all the people who have lied, persecuted me, hurt my children, failed me, failed to help my children, I would be in the way of God dealing with them. That being said, I choose to forgive them, and I step aside to let God be the judge. I pray for their salvation, but it's their choice if they choose Jesus. If they don't, then they can expect a lifetime of continued darkness on this planet and then an eternity in hell. I realize that's harsh, but it's the truth for all of us. We either surrender all of our life to Jesus or we surrender to Satan. It's one way or another. There is no third option. So what else? Well, after the trial was finished, I was honored to be offered an apprenticeship in a nationally renowned attorney's law firm to become an attorney. I never wanted to be involved in politics or government, but after everything that I've seen going on in the judicial system, I cannot stand by and do nothing. I have decided to go to law school for my Juris Doctorate degree, and I will be I will advocate for change in our judicial system. I will not give up on my children. I have and will continue praying for them. They are the heroes in this journey. They are the most brave and courageous kids that I know. I love them deeply, and that love is only growing stronger as time goes by without them. I will close this video with the well-known scripture in Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. This is one of my many prayers for my children. May they have faith like I do and change the world with their testimony. I miss you, Lauren and Clara. I am incredibly proud of you, and I pray for you all the time. I love you with all of my heart.